Dr. the Honorable Adil Dr. Basseer Jeeawody, members of the board of Open University of Mauritius, colleagues, friends, members of the press, good afternoon. It's a great pleasure to welcome you to the Open University. And we have amidst us a Mauritian with vast experience in the field of mental health. And the first time I met him, right, with his vast experience, he impressed me, and I said, we need to have a workshop like that organized so that he can share his experience with each and everyone. And I must say that when we met the Honorable Minister, he was very supportive. And what I can reassure you is that we are not going to stop here. We would continue. We are discussing on various avenues, and we will surely by next year come up with a lot of other initiatives. So I would like to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Basseer Jeeawody for having accepted at a very short notice, because he's leaving on Friday. Tomorrow, yeah, he's leaving tomorrow. So he has accepted to give this lecture and accepted to collaborate and to be what I call him an ambassador of Open University at University of Canberra in Australia. And thank the Honourable Minister for his support in these new ventures. And I invite him to address the audience.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sukong, the head of the director of Open University, members of the board, distinguished members of the board, our chief guest here, Dr. Jeeawody. Dear friends, I'd like to wish you a good afternoon, and I'd like to thank you for giving me this opportunity to sort of introduce our guest speaker here. It is my pleasure indeed to do so. I don't intend to talk too much. I'll speak for about 2 hours. I like the smile. 5 minutes at the most, to tell you my personal views on this issue. And I like doing this question and answer exercise. Question: how many of us here knows somebody who has some issues with mental health? Including myself, so quite a few. The reason I did that is that very often I used to be Minister of Health, hence my little experience in this field. Very often people tend to think that mental health is ça fout mental, n'est-ce pas? It's a big prejudice that goes around this disease. A disease is a disease. One doesn't choose a sexier or a smarter disease than the other one. C'est une pathologie. But that's the extreme situation where you need medication, you need to be either restricted or you need to be offered some, at times, severe medication, etc. But there are issues related to mental health in our day-to-day lives. And this is what I've learned from Dr. Jeeawody in the short meeting I had with him. And I hope by demystifying this subject, it would bring us, teachers, in a better mode, in a better situation to kind of share this with others. We have issues with regards to mental health in our day-to-day work. Is the minister bossing about, or is he making my life hell? Bullying kids at school? Issues related within the department, etc. So there are quite a few things that do have a very bad effect on us, and very often, out of ignorance, we don't do what is required of us to take care of this situation. So I'm grateful to Dr. Jeeawody. Unfortunately, I won't be able to stay for the whole presentation because I've got some other commitments, but I wanted to be here. The other reason why I'm here is that I'd like to congratulate and thank Dr. Sukong for taking this opportunity to have a very eminent person in this field to be doing some research at some stage at the Open University, and also extend our links with University of Canberra to try to see how we could partner together to keep on building on this academic and research field. So I do not wish to take any more of your time. Last thing I want to say is that I was appalled when I was at the Ministry of Health to see that some parents or some family members have left their relatives at the Brown Secker Hospital for up to 10, 15, 20 years. And very often people don't go and visit their family members. And I've also come across some family members wanting to go out during the weekend, and they would come and leave their family who is suffering from mental health in the hospital. I can understand they need some time for themselves, but these are issues that I think we have to discuss and try to see what would be the long-term solution. But plus important, I think, as somebody said, prevention is much better than cure. So once we are more aware of what actually goes into this here, and what is it that is important, and what is it that we need to do, we would be better kind of equipped to take it as it ought to be. So with this, my dear friends, I'd like to thank you for your attention, and je voudrais vous remercier d'avance, Dr. Jeeawody, and you'll have to excuse me, I'll just disappear in about 10-15 times, and I look forward to a fruitful talk and hopefully to a long-term collaboration with yourselves and your University of Canberra. Thank you for your attention.
Just to give you a very brief bio of Dr. Jeeawody. Of course, Mauritian, born in Mauritius, worked in UK for several years, right, before moving to Australia. He has worked in several other countries, including Papua New Guinea. He has worked at professorial level in Australia, Charles Sturt University, Canberra University, and several other universities that I don't want to list, the long list of universities where he has been working. And his PhD is in mental health from Australia. He has a master's degree in education, and he's a registered psychologist in Australia with a diploma in health from UK. So I have the great pleasure in inviting Dr. Jeeawody for his presentation.
Okay, well, good afternoon. I'm glad I'm not doing this presentation in Bhojpuri, because the MBC invited me last year in May to do a program about accidents, road traffic accidents. And they said to me, you have to speak in Bhojpuri. I said, I'm open call Bhojpuri. When I was growing up in Triole, my parents used to speak Bhojpuri. So I learned from them. And so it was very difficult for me. I understand Bhojpuri, I understand Creole, I can speak Creole, I can speak a bit of French, but I feel very comfortable speaking in English. So I hope it's all right with all of you. Now, it's really a great pleasure. Thank you very much, Minister Jeeta and Dr. Sukum. I only met Dr. Sukum recently. We interacted from Canberra, and I had an invitation from the High Commissioner of Australia, and invited me to help Mauritius to set up some initiative in the area of customs and excise. So I helped them, and I put Dr. Sukum in touch with the professor and the CEO of the International Institute for Customs and Excise, and that's how we interacted, and we got to know each other. And I'm here on holidays. I'm enjoying my holidays. That's great. And Dr. Sukum said, come along and meet up with Dr. Jeeta. And I thought, usually when you go and meet ministers, they can spare you only 2.5 minutes. But I was so impressed. Dr. Jeeta was very, very generous in his time. And I was there for about 1 hour, 45 minutes. So we touched on a number of issues, and they actually got very excited. He got very excited. He said, I would like you to present a talk on mental health, or a talk about issues in Mauritius. So I thought through it, and I developed an abstract, and I came up with the title, Mental Health, Everybody's Business. Mental health, everybody's business, yours, mine, and ours. And while I was traveling across Australia, I took the opportunity of talking with a large number of people in villages, in the cities, and I asked them, what are the 3 main issues of concern in Mauritius? And most of them were talking about issues which are very much pertaining to mental health issues. I'm not talking about mental ill health or mental illnesses like schizophrenia and depression and so on, but really mental health issues. So I believe it's a very, very significant matter, not just for Mauritius, but for the world, in Australia and in the UK and other part of the world. I was very fortunate to be here. I took an early retirement from Charles University, where I was for 19 years, and I wanted to make a contribution to Mauritius. So I was based here for about 3 years, and I went back last year. And whilst I was here, I had the opportunity to work at the University of Technology in Mauritius, and I was involved in master's program, honors program in counseling, in psychology, and I was also invited by the University of Mauritius previous to that to present a public lecture. I was invited by the 2 Rotaries. There are 2 Rotaries in Port Louis, and the topic I talked about was, who are you? I asked them, Jeeawody, who are you? And most of them said, oh, I'm a degree holder, I've got a master's degree, I'm a director of a company. I said, no, this is not what I'm looking for. I said, not what you are, but who you are. And they had a problem. They were struggling understanding who this particular person is. I asked the same question to the police. I was invited by the earlier police commissioner to talk about road traffic accident. And I've been on the television for a number of times, really talking about road traffic accident. I had CID presentation with the CIDs and all the chief officers across Mauritius. And up to recently last year, the traffic, 2 sessions with the traffic, and even those people who are examiners for the drivers. I spoke with the drivers, and they were saying, my God, when I go for the driving test, they really scrutinize me. I feel terrible. I'm so nervous. My performance is terrible, so I fail. So that is also very relevant to mental health. And I have spoken to various professionals in NGOs like SOS Poverty, SOS Children Villages, and a number of schools and so on and so forth. So while presenting, it's a learning situation for me. So it's not just presenting for the sake of presenting, but this presentation gave me a contact focus, and I understand, matters which are concerning Mauritius. So I'm just going to share my views with you. I'm not going to talk about mental ill health, but basically mental health. But before I do that, and while I'm talking, I'm going to pass you this thing, all right? This is not to hit on the head of the person who's sitting next to you, but I would like to just pass this on to you, and then just feel for it, and just look at it, and just sort of come up with your own perception. What do you think this is? All right? What do you think this is? And I may ask you a question. Just please express what's your perception of this particular thing, okay? And I'll let you know the reason for doing that. So just have a look at it, and then just pass it on. And I've also got a bag here, and I'm going to focus presentation in this particular bag, all right? We are all a bag, all right? We are all a bag. The bag has got an inside part, and the bag has also got an outside part, okay? Like ourselves, we got an external part, and we have also got what we call an intrinsic part, inside part. So each one of us is a representation of a bag. What we know of individuals, what we know of each one of us here is the mask which we wear. All right? I have yet to see anyone who came through this door sad and crying. I was observing while I was standing there. Everyone had a beautiful smile. Everyone is well dressed, well behaved. Yes? whether you are a bad person or not, because this particular environment invites you to be behaving in a very good way. You control. You control. So all of us wear a mask. I'm wearing a mask. You don't know about me. Really, you know the external part of this particular bag, the introduction which I had, and what you see of me. You know, you judge me accordingly. But we don't know the inside part of the bag. And that's a big problem, that's a big challenge in our society. We don't sufficiently know the inside part of individuals. If I had time, I would give you a paper bag exercise. I would have asked each one of you to prepare a bag. I would give you a bag like this, to prepare your bag and bring it to this particular session. I would ask you to stick anything, draw anything, bring anything which you would like to share publicly with your colleagues here, with your friends here. I guarantee you, how many of you got a sport car? Don't tell me none of you got a sport car. So if you have a sport car, minister got a sport car, I know that. So the minister would bring a picture of the sport car, you know, and stick it outside the bag. Or if he has been, or if you have been to a beautiful place for holidays, you would like to share those pictures, so you stick it outside. Anything pleasant you will bring. But then I would say, bring your bag prepared in such a way that anything personal, anything confidential, anything which you don't want to share, put them inside the bag and bring them along to this particular session. You will do that because expectation of that particular exercise for you to prepare it. Then as part of this particular session, I would ask you to sit in a circle, bring a cushion, feel comfortable, bring your bag along with you, and I would suggest, not ask each person to talk about the bag, but each person to share the bag. It will be very difficult to stop the participants from talking about items which are outside the bag, because they're all very, very pleasant, pleasurable things. You know, if you've been to holidays, you've done fantastic things, you would like to share it. Then gradually I would say, now, who would like to talk about items inside the bag? There would be total silence. I guarantee you there will be total silence. Each one of them will have the bag like this, will sit down and clutch it. And clutch it. They know what's inside the bag. So gradually one person will look inside the bag, peep, and close it. Quite a few would be very reluctant. Okay? Eventually one person will say, okay, I will start first. And most of the items inside the bag will be very confidential, very personal, very traumatic. They have kept it within themselves. There's a term, there's a model which is called Jeeawody window. I've got a slide I'll show you in a minute. The Jeeawody window. So we got the open self. We're very willing to talk about things openly. Then we have the closed self. Then we have things, a frame of the window. You know about me. I don't know about myself from those perspectives. And there's one frame which is the unconscious self. So a lot of the stuff which we have inside the bag are stored in that subconscious self. And this particular exercise will give an opportunity to individual to talk about the inside part of the bag. So eventually one person will start and gradually it will snowball. I've given this exercise to a large number of people, even executive directors. I was invited in Sydney to present a workshop for the weekend, and I gave them this exercise. Executive directors, each time I give this exercise, each time, and I guarantee you if I give this particular exercise to you, at least 15 to 20% of you, that's no exaggeration, I'm just basing my perception on experience, 15 to 20% of you would be very distressed, would be very tearful, because what this particular forum will enable you to do, create an opportunity to talk about things which are unresolved. Quite a few of us, we hide things which have been unresolved from our past life or present life. And we don't have an outlet. We don't get a chance to talk about those things to colleagues, to friends, to family members, and so on. So we keep things under the carpet, keep things until it will snowball. It's like a bottleneck. It will crack, and you'll crack. And you will crack. You have mental health problem, mental illness issues, and so on. So that's one thing which is happening in our society. Lots of challenges. Lots of challenges. We don't know how to deal with those challenges. So exercise like this, which is very easily done, can actually create a forum to open up. So part of that Johari window number one is the open self. The more open we are, the better it is. But a lot of people are very closed. They don't want to talk. So there is a way of making their window number one as big as possible. So if they are a very open person, it's a pleasure to be with open person. Okay? If you meet an open person, very friendly, we met. I would love to meet these two guys. I'd love to have coffee with them because I found they were very open. I'm very impressed with the minister because he didn't say, oh, I've got only 2 minutes to spare. Sorry, but he gave me over 1 hour, 1.5 hours plus. And I was very, very impressed. And I said to Dr. Sukum, we connected, didn't I? We have connected. What made me connect with him? Because of his openness, because of his sincerity. Not thinking one way and saying something different, okay? We have conflict sometimes. We have dichotomy between what we say and how we say it and what we do and so on and so forth. I don't have time for those people. I really don't have time for those people. If I meet a person, I find that person open enough, sensitive enough, sensible enough. It's a pleasure to communicate with that person. We can do business. Business, I don't mean from a business perspective, but from a friendly perspective too. I would love to have another cup of coffee with that person next day. But there are people who are so closed, first time you meet them, you can't get a word out of them. They just listen, they get the maximum from you, but they give you very minimum. And next day that person says, oh, well, one cup of coffee, can we meet? I say, I'm very, very busy. I've got very busy schedule. How about next day? Oh, no, I'm busy too. How about the weekend? No, I'm busy in Mayas. Okay, so you keep making excuses, you don't meet with that person. Why? Because that person is parasite. They get things out from you, but you don't get things out from them. So, okay, we got people like that. And that's a challenging issue in our society. There are also other personalities. In a work term, I'm very, very critical about workforce. Okay, we have created a culture in our society whereby we have 3 types of people. I've done some research in that. We have 3 types of people in any industry. We have the utilizers. You understand the term utilizers? They will do things for self-gain. They will be nice with the boss because there is some advantage for them, either some additional increment or some promotion. They will go and do a course for themselves. So we have the utilizers, people who utilize things for the benefit of themselves, not for the benefit of their colleagues or for the benefit of, the industry, but for themselves. Okay? We have people like traditionalizers. They are great people. They will go and work. They will be there first in the morning to work. They will finish on time. They will be very rarely absent from work, very rarely sick, take sick leave. But they wouldn't progress beyond that point. They wouldn't progress beyond that point. These are the traditionalizers. They like to maintain the status quo. They're very reliant. You can rely on them, and so on and so forth. But the people I'm interested in are people like you. Congratulations. I formed my own perceptions about you. You are here because you are interested. You are not the utilizers. You are here because you want to know more about mental health issues. You are here because you want to do things from the information. You're going to professionalize. You are going to make a difference. You are going to make a change. You are the strategist. And this is the people I'm interested in, the true professionalizers who are committed to, not just to themselves, to their colleagues and the workplace. If we have enough champions, enough professionalizers, we can do a lot of things in anything, including mental health. Okay? So in industries, we have got 3 groups of people. However, the problem is you may have heard of the tall poppy syndrome. If you are the professionalizer, if I'm the professionalizer, I'm trying to make a difference in the workplace, what other people are going to do? They will chop me. They will chop me. They will stop me. They will stop me from progressing. They would put pressure on me. They will say, hey, keep it fair. You know, for such a long time, we have tried to do this. We have not been successful. Oh, are you mad? Tofu, you are trying to do things now. You won't be successful. So they will discourage you. So what happens to those professionalizers? They pack the bag and they go. So who suffers? Everybody else. Industry doesn't progress, you know, and that's a real problem. So we have a lot of good people leaving industries because their mental health needs are not met. They are really truly champion. So I think what we tend to do, we tend to spend a lot of time with people who are problematic. They get more attention. It's a reinforcement game. You know, just like a small child who is naughty, you know, you tend to spend maximum time with that child trying to change their behavior. And children who are well-behaved, they get minimum time. So I think we need to change the focus in our society. We need to really create champions, not just create, but find out who are the champions and how can we nurture them. And they can make a difference. They can make a change. I've got some strategies which I can suggest later on. But I think look at things from a positive perspective. We don't have enough champions. Okay? When we talk about mental health, Dr. Jeeta mentioned mental ill health. In mental health, our mental psychiatric hospitals, we have got large number of people who are practically locked there. They may have been there with depression or some stress factors or some very severe mental illness like schizophrenia and so on and so forth, and they are there. Why are they still there? We need to explore and find out. Is it because of the environment? Is the environment reinforcing their illness? The staff who are working there, are they exercising what we call the therapeutic self? I mentioned to the reporter earlier in the morning, the therapeutic self. When you have a headache, you take some form of medication like Panadol to reduce your headache, and you get better. But if a person has a problem, how can you, as an individual, as a person, make a difference to that particular person? How can you act like a Panadol? How can you present yourself in such a way that it becomes therapeutic? I don't think we have enough people who exercise that sort of notion. We need to revisit that. Even in day-to-day, you know, I went to buy some gato pima the other day. You know, I'm very polite, so I wait for my turn. So there was a youngster, about 16 years old, came along, jumped the queue, had his money, sent gato pima. I didn't ask, can I have 5 gato pima? Sent gato pima. Excuse me, but I was in front of you. You know what was his response? Leopanjanaye. Leopanjanaye. So I let him go, and I said, I learned from that. I said, oh, it's a matter of attitude. Where did he learn from? Okay? And that's in society, you don't do that. So whose fault is that? How can we educate those people to wait for the turn? And it's a culture in Mauritius. I tell you what, it's not a critique, but it's reality. Everywhere you go, they just jump the queue. And I just laugh at them, to be frank. You know, you could be waiting. This morning, This morning, I was desperate to my ink, the printer ran out. I won't mention the name of this firm, it would be terrible. So I phoned them up 9 o'clock. I said, I'm run out of ink, I need to print something. Can you help me? Oh, no, the meeting la. We're having a meeting, I will ring you back. So I phoned another place, and they had the ink, and I sent my brother to get it. In a minute, they phoned me 9:30, half an hour later. And, no, sorry, nothing at all. Okay. Yeah, it's not okay. Uncle Olmer, yeah, it's not okay. You know, it was an urgency for me, emergency to get that. Your meeting is important. We talk about the client come first. Whatever business you are, whether you're in a hospital, whether in a community, your client come first, okay? What's the point of having big propaganda, marketing, and so on if your attitude is not good? So going back to this therapeutic stuff, I got a very bitter thing. I wouldn't go back there for a while because I was not very impressed with the attitude. And these sort of people got to understand, not be self-centered. That is another aspect of mental health. A lot of people, not just from Mauritian perspective, from other perspective, what we call them is egocentric, self-centered. You know, I am self-centered. As far as it's okay with me, I go to a meeting, everything is fine. You know, other people doesn't matter. Okay, this self-centeredness, and I think we need to change that. If we become self-centered, then things will be problematic. If everybody is self-centered, and potentially everybody can be self-centered. Can you imagine 5 people, or all of you being self-centered? I will tell you some research I did. With a very large group of people, we gave them a survey, and we categorized them according to their personalities, and we divided them into 4 groups. We divided them into 4 groups. They didn't know what was happening. Obviously, the survey was with their permission. And we placed one group in one room, and we said, discuss this topic. Prison is for punishment, not for rehabilitation. We placed a second group, and we gave them the same topic to discuss. The third group was the same topic to discuss. Okay? And the fourth group had the same topic to discuss. And there were lots of observers observing what was happening, the group dynamic. And then we had what we call a plenary session. We brought everybody together, and we gave them the feedback. First group, the moment they went in the room, they said, oh, we have got only 1 hour to discuss this issue. We have to be productive. We have to elect a chairperson. And they elected this chairperson. They nominated the scriber who can scribe, and they were very orderly. They were very orderly, and they came up with the goods. Very serious. So that was a formalistic group, people who are very formal. It's bloody boring. I'll tell you now. Can you imagine working with a group of people? Everybody is so efficient. My goodness me, it will be a boring place to work. Everybody is so efficient. And that group, they were very, very productive, but there was no fun. So if you have a very serious sort of project, you give people who are, those formalistic people to give the project, and rest assured that they will come up with the goods. The second group was what we call the sociocentric. People who are very sociable, everything is jolly for them, they're very happy, everyone is a friend, except work. So they were put together, and they were given the same topic to discuss. I tell you, the moment they went inside that room, we got plenty of time. So some people went out for a coffee, others went for a cigarette, others were sitting on the windowsill and talking about what they did last night, what parties they went to. It was fun until the 11th hour. Somebody said, oh my God, we got 5 minutes to finish our work, let's get together. It was too late. So they were not productive. They had fun. It was not productive. And the third group, my goodness, the third group was everyone who was self-centered, the egocentric. What do you think happened? What do you think happened in that group? Were they productive? What happened, do you think? Yes, good, congratulations. If I had a certificate, I would give it to you. You know, the moment they went inside that room, one person said, hey, I'm the son of the mayor. I have got lots of experience from my dad about chairing meetings. I know how he conducts meetings. So therefore, I will be the chairperson. And the second person, oh, no way you are going to be the chairperson. I have got more experience than you have. I have been a director director of a company, so I should be a chairperson. You know what? Within 5 minutes, we had 5 people not elected democratically, but self-elected to be the chairperson. Because of what? I know the best. Who are you to tell me how I should do things? And the whole group was a flop. The whole group was a flop. Do you know people like that in our society, in our company? Do you know people who backbite? There are personality conflicts. Of course. Lots of them. I know it. I know it. So what is doing for their productivity and so on? You know, the fourth group was the most productive. We mixed them. So there was 1/3 formalistic, 1/3 sociocentric, and 1/3 were egocentric. So if the egocentric person said, hey, Mamuka Professor, I can do it, the formalistic person said, no, what is your rationale for being elected? Can you please explain? And they will stop it. And the sociocentric person will have a laugh. Don't joke, you can't be the chairperson. There are lots of other people who can be more productive, okay? So when we have a mixture of people, they can produce better, okay? So when we talk about mental health, if we don't have such dynamic, if we don't understand people effectively, we just plonk them. They have got a master in engineering, but they are the director of human relation. There's a person who got qualification in building a house, but you put that person to be responsible for something else. They're highly qualified. And I said to the embassy, you know, you're trying to put the round peg into the square hole, okay? So we are creating problem for those people. They're not sufficiently prepared to cope in their work. So they are stressed out. And they're very shy about talking about their stress because they are appointed in a very significant position. If they say, I've got a problem, I can't cope, what do you think the colleagues will say? So that's a problem in our workforce situation, okay? And we have to be very, I do coaching, I coach company directors and so on, and it's amazing when they come to me, you know, on a friendly basis, the sort of difficulties they express is just tremendous. They are not in a position to talk about those issues with their colleagues because they are frightened of being laughed at, okay? Sometimes we promote people just because they are doing very well at this level. We believe that they will do much better at that level, so we promote them. So we really promote them to a position they can't cope. Just because somebody is very good at this level, there is no certainty that person will do well at that level too. So what are we doing to that particular person? Creating more problem. Okay? So I would like you to think about mental health issues broadly. I can stand up here and talk about mental illness. Mental illness, you know, categorized into what we call psychotic or psychosis, like schizophrenia, paranoid schizophrenia, and so on. Then we have got neurotic illness, neurosis, like depression and anxiety state, phobias, and so on. We also got personality disorders. So people who are suffering from a mental illness, you know, I'm very critical about that. we still use very much of a medical model approach. They have got signs and symptoms, we give them medication, we attempt to treat them, and they may not get better because medication can create more of side effects. And I think the term I'm going to use here is called iatrogenic. Iatrogenic. Anyone from a medical background here? Yes? Iatrogenic. You may have heard of that term, iatrogenic. You know, you believe you are treating a person, but you're creating more problem for that person, like a side effect, okay? And have done research in depression, elderly. What we found was elderly people who are given the diagnosis of clinical depression, signs and symptoms of depression, they are given antidepressant medication. So, it's not doing any good for them. As a matter of fact, the antidepressants will create more side effects. Our research demonstrates that older people, they look depressed because they feel powerless. They feel lonely. They feel hopeless. They feel helpless. So will medication help them? No. So we have to do something different. Sometimes we might have a strategy whereby we give them medication as well as some other therapeutic intervention, not just medication. I very strongly believe that we are very much medical model orientated. I've also done some work in general hospitals. You would be surprised to know that if you have a medical problem, if you have a surgical problem, when you go to a hospital, two-thirds of that individual person's needs will be what we call psychosocial needs. Believe it or not, two-thirds of that particular person's needs will be psychosocial needs. Yet, what we do is predominantly we have a medical model approach, very sign symptoms orientated across the board, so they don't get better. A person who is a heart problem, I was talking to someone who is waiting for some transplant, not transplant, some, how you call it, bypass. And the person is very stressed out. People who are treated in hospitals, they get better. We send them back to the original place they come from, and those places had the problems. So what we do, we are creating a revolving door sort of situation, you know, the door which is going round and round and round. So they come to hospitals through one door, they get better, they go back, and they go back to the same situation, and they don't get better. So we have those sort of situations, okay? When we talk about mental health issues, I went to a children's ward recently, pediatric ward recently. I love kids, and I'm very, very fond of children. There was a little girl who was about 4 years old. And I said, "Oh, how are you?" The moment she saw me, she ran away. Not in a playful way, but she ran away in a frightened way. So I didn't feel right. I asked the staff, "Why do you think this particular person, this child behaved like that?" He said, "Oh, it's not just you. That child behaves the same way with any male person who comes to that ward, whether it's a male doctor, a male visitor, or a male family member." And yet that child was there for a surgical reason. She burned her 2 feet, she had big bandages, and she was there for a medical reason. So everyone was doing the right thing, doing their dressing, caring for them from a medical surgical perspective, but they failed to understand why this particular child behaved like that. I followed up. So I said, well, if she is running away in a frightened way, particularly from a male figure, there must be a reason. That's not normal. I followed up. They investigated, and she was interfered with sexually. All right? She was interfered with sexually. This is a real case, real scenario. Yet, when the child went to the general hospital, everyone was very concerned about her feet getting better and sending her back to school and so on and so forth. What would have happened, you send that child back to the situation she came from. How about her future? And there are lots of children in that position. Okay? There are lots of children in that position. So therefore, how can we make ourselves, train ourselves in a therapeutic way to be able to recognize those difficulties and do something about that? Lots of children are escaping through the net, and these are the children who are being traumatized. What we call in psychological term, in medical term, is a critical stage of development. If things happen like that, traumatic experiences during the critical phase of development, they can be affected in the long term. We have a lot of children in that position. And more so in our society, divorce, separation is rife. Both parents working, rife. So we are failing to understand what's happening with those children, okay? So children are getting affected, and I think we need to be very, very careful. I don't have the facts and figures. I got some statistics. I can't quote today, but if you were to do some research, you find that large number of children are in that particular position. We also got adolescence. Adolescence also is a very critical stage of development. There's a lot of stress, lots of pressure amongst youngsters, not just from personal development, from a physical development, psychological development, but they're concerned about education, they're concerned about growing up, working, and so on and so forth. They also got a lot of pressure from society, from peers, particularly from parents, and they are so suffocated. They are suffocated, and there is no way out. So what do? They get into depression, and I know for a fact suicidal tendencies, suicidal rate is high in Mauritius, so is in other countries. Okay? So we need to really find what's happening there. Middle-aged people. I was traveling on a plane recently in Australia, and there was this guy in beautiful suit, sat next to me, didn't say anything at all, and the first thing he said, "What am I going to say to my wife when I go home? What am I going to say to my wife when I go home?" So you would think, oh God, he must have had an affair, and he don't want to share that to his wife. And he was very subdued, very quiet. I said, what can I do? What can I say to my wife, to my family? The same day he was retrenched. He was a company director. He was retrenched. He was just told, sorry, but tomorrow there is no job for you. And there are lots of people in that situation. If you are not multi-skilled, next day you won't have a job. If he's a company director, he has reached a stage, very comfortable stage financially, socially, how is he going to cope with those expectations? And we have people at that level, particularly men. I'm not sure about in Australia, in here, but in Australia, particularly men, they're very suicidal. We have got incidental car accident. You know, they're going home, driving a car, suddenly the car hit a tree, and this guy dies. How do we know it's not a suicide? So when you take history from parents and colleagues and so on, we find that this guy was actually subdued. It's easy to hit a tree and commit suicide or die like that because the family members would say, well, my father or my husband died because it was a car accident. That's a trend. There's also a trend in elder people. Elder people. We wrote a book. The book we wrote was Successful Aging, Perspectives on Health and Social Construction. We did research in the area of depression, disability, and so on and so forth. And we found that large number of older people are very depressed. They're suffering from loneliness. And that trend is also happening in Mauritius. True? Okay. We had huge family network units. The unit is disseminating. Yet the compulsion placed on family members is that we are expected to care for the elderly, whether you want to or not. So they are caring for them, believing they're caring for them. But really from deep inside, they are maybe just doing it, maybe just to show people that, oh yeah, they're very concerned. So in the eyes of the public, in the eyes of the public, they are seen to be very caring people. But when the public is not there, they are saying the wrong thing to those elderly people, and they're quietly suffering. They can't respond. They can't actually, I'm not generalizing here, but that's an incident. So suicide amongst the elderly people is rising. Okay, that's a big problem. So we need to actually look into that as well. All right. So I mean, I can go on, but I just wanted you to present a snippet of mental health issues from different diversities. Accident, for example, I've done a lot of work here in Mauritius. I was a consultant for an international trucking company for 5 years, and we introduced what we call psychometric testing for truck drivers, huge truck drivers. When I talk about truck drivers, it's not just small camion like here. They have got road train carrying new cars, about 12 new cars, petroleum and other things. And the company we worked for, they were very conscious of safety. They didn't want to employ anyone who was going to be an accident risk. So our role as consultant was to put some strategies in place to find out who is going to be an accident risk. And we did that. And we prevented accident by a very high percentage, over 60%. What we did was really find out about the human factors who are responsible for accidents. And research demonstrates that about 96% of accidents which happen are very much related to human factors, not the road condition or the weather or whatever. It's the human factors. And the human factors are things like decision making. When you're driving, how quickly you can make a decision about certain things. Problem about coordination. Problem about precision. Okay? There are issues about aggression, behavioral issues. And most importantly, the majority of the road traffic accidents, especially with trucks, happen because of mental fatigue. Why are they fatigued? Because industries are expecting them to do 2 shifts or 3 shifts. They get up very early in the morning because they need additional money. So, little sleep, more work. That's a problem. Mental fatigue will be when they're driving, there's a lot of stimuli like noise and visionary stimuli and so on. They get mentally fatigued. So the highest rate of accidents are due to mental fatigue. And the psychometric testing we did was to really determine to what extent a person is going to be an accident risk. We were also able to find out about medical conditions, for example, diabetes, some hypertension, depression, and other associated conditions can actually minimize your concentration time, your reaction time. How do we know? Those people who committed accidents here in Mauritius, they don't fit in that category. We tend to blame the brake is not working. We tend to blame the condition of the weather. We tend to blame this and that. Do we have any strategies to test the human factors? There are strategies, and we can prevent them. And this company was very astute, very wise. So when a person applied for a position like a truck driver, they have the license to say they can drive, but how the license doesn't say they're going to be a safe driver. So the test we did was to find out to what extent they're going to be in a... We used to give them tests to purposely make them aggressive. There were lots of instruments. And I won't tell you the word they said, but really terrible words, They used to just kick the whole thing and throw it out. I can't do it. And they used to say, okay, go outside, have a bit of a break, have some fresh air, come back. Sorry, sir, I didn't mean to do that. And after 2 minutes, same thing. Would you appoint him? I didn't. Because if they're going to go out in the road getting frustrated, do you think they will be able to concentrate on the driving? No. This is the people who tend to have the most accident. And I can find out if they're going to be an aggressive person or not. And then recommend to the person, Yes, very good credentials, so many years of driving, but I wouldn't appoint him in a certain position because he's going to cause more accidents. People who were referred to me to do some testing, they said, can you find out what's the problem with this person? Every time he loads new cars on the big truck, he tends to scratch it. He tends to scratch it. Can you find out? So I tested, and I recommended that this person can work as a driver, but please do not let him load and unload new cars on that truck. He's going to, scratch it, and he's going to break the side mirror. And these, how did you know? I knew. So I recommended, please do not. I said, that's the reason why we recommended him to do the test. That's exactly what he was doing. Now, why he was doing was because he was enjoying his drink. Because of the union issue, he was not sacked. He was given an alternative job in the firm. How would you call it, this little machine to lift things? Forklift. So, poor guy. He was driving a truck with minimum 12 new cars. Next day, he was driving a forklift. At least he had a job. That's how the company's name was very, very, well known, and they got lots of business. So when we talk about mental health issues, that's another aspect. The person didn't get sacked, got the job, but he was put in a position whereby he could get job satisfaction, he was motivated enough, and so on and so forth. Okay, so there are lots of issues like this we have to consider from a mental health perspective. Education. May I say something about education? Education. I'm also very critical about education. Mauritius, in particular, and other developing countries, we are very credential-driven, which is good. Tell me who doesn't want to do some form of studies, some form of degrees. A lot of people, okay? And universities are also churning degrees. Not just here, everywhere. If you don't have money, you borrow money. You get big loan, pressure on parents and so on. Okay? There are lots of issues like this. And they got a degree. And they have a degree. Most of them would get a job in an appropriate field, but there are other people who are not getting jobs. What do you think it's doing to them? It's difficult. I have taught at master's level here, and currently I'm supervising 5 or 6 PhD students as a principal supervisor. So first thing I ask them, just imagine you are reading your thesis. What is the last line would you be reading? What difference are you going to make to society? And can you write it down in a small matchbox? I don't want to know how you're going to do it and so on and so forth. Just write one brief sentence and not longer than, things which can go in a match. They have difficulties. If they can't answer it, they go away and then they write it. I say, okay, your thesis is going to be just that. I don't want you to be doing a PhD to say, I've done it, I'm a doctorate and this and that. What difference are you going to make to society? They will have the credential, but at the same time, it will ensure that they're going to make a difference. And I think we need to review the way we reviewing. Over here at UTM, I had master's honors students in counseling, and I was teaching law and ethics. And I said to them, that's it, you're going to learn yourselves. I'm going to stand up here and teach you. What is lacking here in Mauritius, ethics-wise, from a psychology perspective, from a counselor? I say, we don't have any documentation to guide us, to direct us in ethical practices. So what can you do about it? This is an opportunity as a group of master's students to develop something for implementation. So I made them research. You find out what's happening in countries like Canada, USA, UK, Australia, New Zealand, and what's not happening in Mauritius. Learn from that. Look at the population, look at the challenges. How can you develop an ethical document which is very meaningful, implementable, and going to make a difference? So for the whole semester's work was just that. I didn't lecture, and now they have a document which is ready for implementation. Sadly, we are not got the infrastructure to implement that document. And we talked very briefly, group of psychologists, group of social workers, group of welfare officers. Do we have a professional organization which can recommend the type of training which these professionals should have? Do we have professional organizations which can monitor how these people are practicing? Do we have a professional organization which can safeguard the community? For example, if a professional organization, a professional practitioner is exercising misconduct, how can we safeguard the community? How do we know all the people who are practicing counseling, psychology, and so on and so forth, they are doing it well? How do we know? See what I mean? So when we have mental health issues in the community, people go to psychologists, welfare officers, and so on. They do a bit of counseling. Do we have any way to demonstrate that whatever they're doing, we are creating an impact? If there was impact being created, we would be minimizing the problems. According to my brief perception, I think the problems are still there. True? Don't be frightened, just say it. I know it, because I've got some statistics, I've made observation. So, education is going there, practice is going there, yet people's problems are still lagging behind. My belief is they should go hand in hand, parallel. Truly parallel. We can shift that. If we maintain the status quo, the problems will snowball, because there is no way of monitoring what people are doing. We have degrees in counseling and so on, yet I know it, we don't have enough practical experiences. In Australia, for example, I teach in psychology program as well as mental health and so on. To become a psychologist, you have to have a bachelor honors degree and further 2 years of practical experience. We call it practicum, supervised by a recognized supervisor. And that supervisor will make sure that what you have done is satisfactory and you are sufficiently prepared to be let loose in the society. Then you're resting, making sure that whatever you do, it is well. We are not, going back to the medical term I use, iatrogenic. A professional should make a difference, not create more problems. But do we have a mechanism to monitor that? My first recommendation would be, all right, I'm not going to be mincing my word, I'm not going to be shy about it. We have to create a professional organization. Truly. Members who are committed, professionalizers, who can start looking at issues, mental health issues in Mauritius, for example, and how the psychologists, welfare officers, and others can make a difference. How can we prepare them? How can we work together with universities like Open University or other university, prepare them sufficiently, not just to give them a credential who can be let loose and practice, and we don't have any way to monitoring what they're doing, whereas a professional organization can monitor. Other role of a professional organization is such that if a practitioner is misconducting himself or herself, the organization has got all the right to deregister this particular person. It happens, a lot of people get deregistered, like we have in medical field. Why can't we have other things? Okay? And back to education. I believe that education won't be just teaching, but really enabling learning. Very situated. Situated learning means each individual student will have to look at his or her own situation. Okay? And then do certain things to come up with some new strategies, new ideas, whether you're in marketing, management, medical, and whatever. So the sort of strategies we have to introduce are things like what we call reflection on action, reflection in action. They need to reflect on their practices. We have to enable them to think critically, critical thinking, critical analysis, not just give them the knowledge. I don't believe in examination. I tell my student, whether undergraduate, postgraduate, that's the first word I use. Congratulations, you have passed. So they look at me. Pass? I say, yeah, you are not here to fail, are you? But according to me, pass is not getting high distinction. Here, all the students say, oh, sir, please, sir, give me high distinction, sir, because I want to make sure that, I said, I'm not going to give high distinction to you. I would rather you just get a pass, but demonstrate that you have actually learned and able to apply the theory. So we need to enable that to happen. And I think that's another way of changing society from a mental health perspective. I'm very keen to recommend, very, very keen to recommend that I spoke with Dr. Sukum very briefly, and I'm going to make a recommendation that Open University is very well placed to start looking for example, a master's degree in mental health. Not master's degree in mental ill health, master's degree in mental health. Very, very multidisciplinary. Doesn't matter what discipline you are, whether you are a company director, whether you are a health practitioner, medical, allied health, or whatever, do a degree in mental health. Not just to come to learn about mental health, but really situated, whatever department you're coming from, look at your own situation, and the universities can facilitate your learning from research and so on, so that assessment is based on not an examination or a piece of work, but assessment will be based on what difference you're making in-house. That can be done. Rather than just telling people this is what you should do, this is what, how you can change it, enable people to change it. That's one way to go about it. Okay? So there are lots of issues. I'm going to stop here now and maybe enable you to ask me questions. Otherwise I will go on.
Thank you very much.
Tell us about this. We're waiting to go.
About this one here. Well, that's me, by the way, not that many years ago. And when I was in England, I used to have very long hair up to my shoulder. I used to wear a yellow shirt with metal buttons. I used to drive a sport car. I used to wear high-heel shoes. But anyway, that's a fairly recent picture. But don't forget about the picture. What's more important is everyone is trying to accomplish something big. True? Everybody. Not realizing that life is made up of little things. Little things. Don't think big, little things. Okay? In professional jargon, we use terms like serialist, and holistic. Some people can see things from a very I'm a holistic person. If you give me a big project, like I have been National Director for Indigenous Mental Health, I have been Dean for International Program, plonk me in a big project, I'm happy. I'm a very global person, big picture person, but there are people who are serialists. They look at stage by stage, do one thing at a time, and pick up something simple. And I also very strongly believe that success breeds success. If you are successful in one thing, you want to be successful in the next thing. So if you pick something simple, make that as a success, then you go to the next stage. Okay, so there's a message in that. Then life is divided into three terms. That which was, that which is, that which will be. Let us learn from the past to profit by the present, and from the present to live better in the future. That's William Wordsworth, okay? And that's very true. Traditionally, we tend to talk how we used to do things, how things used to be. That's gone. Let's learn from that, okay? Let's learn about what's, important now and what can we do in the future, okay? Don't believe that, things will just pass and happen. We need to make it happen. And that's a very strong message which I would like to pass on. That which is. How do we know that which is? I have given you one or two examples. We have to conduct research, not big scientific research, small-scale research with a small r, and research has to be action research. Okay? Do it properly. And then when you implement, we have to be also careful. I'm very, very critical about big consultants coming, big research being done. There are tons of beautiful reports being written with very, very elegant, eloquent recommendations. But what happened is they're sitting on the bookshelves. We don't have a, you know, life's problem wouldn't be called hurdles if there was not a way to get over them. We have hurdles, but they are not barriers. If you're running, jumping over a hurdle, you knock it down. But next time, you learn from that. So that's the message. Start looking at yourself. Look at the bag. Wish I could do an exercise with you. And each time I have given this paper bag, like I said, about 15 to 20% of people are very tearful. The worst group, not worst, but more challenging group I had, because I was the National Director for Indigenous in Australia, and I gave the Indigenous people this particular exercise. And about 90% of them were very tearful, very distraught, mainly because they have had unresolved things. You may have heard of stolen generation. So that was the only opportunity they had to talk about it. And I had to invite my colleagues to help me out. So it's common. You are unique in all the world, rare and without compare. The world awaits your insights. You are special. And I truly believe you are special, because the message you got from me, I'm really 100% sure, 200% sure I'm not going to forget it. I just particularly wanted, my objective was to plant at least one seed in your brain, in your mind. Have I done so? One seed. So when you go out of this particular room, that seed will grow. You are truly professionalizers, so congratulations. We don't have everyone present here, but you can start making a difference. You can start snowballing, okay? The Johari window I mentioned is a model. I won't have time to explain to that. And finding your inner self. Tony, you may have seen that when you invited me to present at Middlesex University. Yeah. So I think finding your inner self is very, very important. You know, that's mental health issues. You know, you have got things inside yourself. You don't have an outlet, and suddenly it bursts like a volcano. And people who suffer from mental illness are in that position, truly. So we can prevent. A country is judged by the well-being of the society. Because if the society is experiencing well-being, there would be more together, resilient, and productive. So I think we need to, you know, yeah. Okay. Thank you. So,
Do you know what is this?
sorry?
What is this?
What's that?
The wooden thing.
They're all curious to know. Okay. What do you think of this? Tony, what do you think of this?
It's a good-looking root. Wood.
Wood. Okay. How would you describe it?
Interesting.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Any comments? What do you think? I'm sure each one of you got a thought. It's a thing. It's an item. So I'm sure you should be able. How can you describe it? Would each person describe the thing in the same way? Why not? Perception, how you perceive. Where's that perception coming from? Your experience, your knowledge about things, and your life experience, past experience, okay? Anything else? Torch, yeah, okay. I can use this to find out inside you. Okay? In Northern America, the Incas, the Red Indian there, they sit in a circle and they have a worry stick. If they have worries, they have a stick. This is not a stick, but just a stick. They sit down very quietly and they pass the stick from one person to the next. So if the stick comes to me, I can choose to be very quiet. If it goes to Dr. Sukum, look at it and this is a very worried face. Person doesn't feel very happy. So there will be opportunity to talk about that item more. So really, it's a reflection of the inner self. So if the person says, that person doesn't look very happy, that means he's not very happy. I'm not saying you're very happy. So there will be opportunity for you to start talking. And it's a worry stick. And they resolve their problems there and then. They still do it traditionally. But in our society, when we have a bit of a problem, people laugh, don't they? We call it a crabbing system. Crab. You know, you put a dozen of crabs here. One crab will start to move on the top, on the wall. What will the second crab do? Pull you down. And the third one will go up. This is our society. It's a miserable society. I'm telling you, it's a bloody miserable society. We have to change that. People laugh, like the tall poppy syndrome. We laugh at other people's problem because we feel better. By pulling a person down, we feel better.
I just want to say, from my opinion, it's not one size fits all.
No.
It really isn't.
Yeah.
Cities are different, countries are different.
Exactly.
They all have attributes, but to a different weighting.
That's right. They have. Each can have traveled very widely, and you go from country. There are countries I'm very scared to go to. Papua New Guinea, I was very scared. South Africa, I was very scared. And certain part of India, I was very, very scared. Mauritius is a very beautiful country. I tell you now, it's a pleasure to come here. I'm spending some time trying to assist, trying to help, because it's a beautiful country. Its potential is just so great. Really, really great. It's a very educated society, very together. Culturally, we're very together. People talk very highly of Mauritius. And if we are not doing the right thing, we would lose those warm fuzzies. And I tell you, we will lose those warm fuzzies. So let's recognize the potentials we have, the talents we have. Use those talents, not just look at negative things. We tend to dwell on negative things. You know, these are negative. Let's start about positive things, like you said. Not about who's pulling the crab, but who is really helping others, who's making a difference. Let's recognize those champions. Look at positive things, and I think we can make a difference. Don't run away from problems. I don't like the word problems. Problem has got a negative connotation. Let's use a term like challenge. What are the challenge? That means, or the hurdle, that means things can be done. Okay?
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, Dr. Jeeawody.
Thank you.
Very briefly, if you have one or two questions, you have his email, his contact, you can still contact him. If you have any question, one or two questions you would like to ask.
Yes, would you say that people who have got, those who have got a green-type personality, would they be more prone to mental illness?
Yeah, we have different sort of personalities. There are certain types who are prone to not just mental illness, but even physical illness. So how do we know which type of personality they belong to? Research demonstrates that, yes, you're right, they are more susceptible too. So therefore, how can we make that known to those people? And how can we introduce strategies to prevent? Okay, same as diabetes, same as hypertension, heart problems, certain people are, okay, type of that, okay? But personality is just one factor. We also create mental health problems through other factors, genetic, community, stress factors. In our society, we have what we call trauma. We have post-traumatic episode. So a lot of people suffer from conditions silently. We don't know how to recognize that. How do we know in our workplace people are stressed out? How do we know? How do we know recognize the signs and symptoms and do something about it? Okay, so you're right. I didn't touch on personality. One message I would like to also mention: the world is. We live in an era of stress, and we also, it's not my word, it's read somewhere. We also live in a narcissistic society. True? Narcissistic society. From a country's perspective as well, each country is competing against other country. We want to be the best. We want to be seen to be best. If I fall down and hurt myself, it's not because of me, it's because of you. There are 40, 50 people here, 100 eyes. There were 100 eyes looking at me and knew I was going to fall, but you didn't tell me I was going to fall. So I won't blame myself. So this is real society. We tend to blame others except us. Okay? Any other questions?
Yes.
Just one last comment. When
Okay,
I was
sure.
a student, I read a lot of Maslow,
Yes.
and you remind me, you seeing the best in people and not assuming the worst.
That's right.
That humanistic side of psychology.
Exactly.
And I think it's more important today than it was
Exactly.
when I was a kid.
I think you are to the point, yeah. The Maslow hierarchy of needs, the most basic needs. If people are satisfied with the most basic needs, I did some research on what motivates people to work. And what we found was people get motivated to work because they're working in a very friendly, safe environment. That's Maslow hierarchy of needs, okay? Or they are given the recognition. But in our society, because of the tall poppy syndrome, if they have got the talent, we subdue them. We don't get them a chance to shine. So they become very upset, very distressed, okay? So that's Maslow hierarchy of needs. So we need to look at those levels. A lot of people love to work in a friendly environment. If everything is very rigid, lots of procedures, lots of policies and so on, just for the sake of having policies to safeguard the industry, that's wrong. I'm very critical about quality assurance. We tend to do quality assurance, tick list, check, to show the authority that you are doing the right thing. True? I know it's true. Whereas doing it what we call in an emancipatory way. We do things in a technical way to show others that we are doing it right. And when the inspector has left the department, we got a certificate to say we are a safe environment to work. Next week, back to the square one. Until the next quality assurance round. Critic. Advocacy. Do we have people from NGOs? Yeah? NGOs are supposed to be an advocate to society. I know quite a few people are an advocate because they want to show, I'm an advocate, I'm helping society, great stuff. But the degree of commitment is not there. I'm critical about that. So if you're really truly an advocate, you have to do something about it, very willingly in an emancipatory way. Not to get a certificate award from the president of Mauritius and so on and so forth, but really commit. I would rather not have an award, but committed to that. So I can go on. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any question? No? So again, Dr. Jeeawody, let me thank you on behalf of the Open University for this beautiful lecture.
Thank you.
Very inspiring. And I hope that everybody who's here has benefited from your own experience, from the experience that you have shared, and they will be able to at least get the seed and let the seed grow. Okay? So thank you very much.
Can I just say a last message? Last one. Sorry, I just wanted to pass a very last message. We can talk about these issues until the cows come home, so to say in England, until the cows come home. A lot of people are very good at talking. I'm very good at talking, but I'm very action-orientated. I think to make a difference, I would very strongly recommend, and I'm going to recommend to the Minister very, very, very strongly that Mauritius sets up a task force. It's about time. About 8 to 10 years ago, Les Mauriciens invited me to write write an article. They interviewed me, and the title of that article was Les Mauriciens sont stressés. Les Mauriciens sont stressés. And they had a big picture of me. And at that time, I recommended that Mauritius had a task force, and it has not been so. Problems have escalated and continue to be so. So I would like to recommend again, okay, that it's about time we set up a task force with members who are really committed to that and then start making a difference. So thank you very much. Thank you.